I'm Edwin Warfield, the publisher of CityBiz, and I'm honored today to interview Vincent Bradley, who's the CEO of Arundel Dermatology. Welcome, Vincent.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So tell us about Arundel Dermatology. What makes the organization unique in today's healthcare landscape, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, so Anne Arundel Dermatology is based here in the greater Baltimore area. We started 50 years ago with our first practice in Anne Arundel County, which is south of Baltimore near Annapolis. And over the years, we've grown to now over 100 practices in 7 states, from Pennsylvania to Florida. And we have over 300 providers and a little right around 1,800 team members. And we provide a full spectrum of dermatological services: general medical dermatology, surgery, Mohs surgery, aesthetic services. We have a number of dermatopathology labs. We do aesthetics and cosmetic procedures along with clinical research. And so one of the things that we really believe sets us apart is our focus on clinical quality. And when I was recruited to this role in May of 2023, a big part of my own personal due diligence, of course, obviously focused on some of the financial aspects, but I really was interested in our clinical reputation. Do we provide great care to our patients? And I was pleased that we did then, and we still do today. And I think that's a key part of our differentiation.
So you've led the company through a period of impressive growth and transformation. What have been the drivers, and what's been your leadership philosophy? And what part of it has been sort of internal growth, growth with, or the addition of additional practices? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, like I said, when I joined the practice in May of 2023, the company was in a turnaround mode. We needed to go through a transformation both culturally and financially. And so what I focused on and continue to focus on just now in a little bit of a different way based on where we are is, we I focus first on building a great executive team. And I believe we've done that. It's taken some time, but nonetheless, that's really a critical foundational point. And then secondly, just really honed in on winning the hearts and minds of our providers, our physicians, our nurse practitioners, our physician assistants, are really critical. All team members are important, of course, but those providers are the ones who, they're providing that clinical care to our patients. And then thirdly, what we really focused on and what we continue to focus on is, there were tons of priorities, and we were chasing a lot of rabbits, quite frankly. And so really introducing a real focus on prioritization and execution is really, I think, led to a significant turnaround for us. And then I mentioned it earlier, but certainly last but not least, is ensuring that our quality care and great service to our patients remains at the forefront of everything that we do, and it interweaves into all of our strategies and approaches. But given kind of the environment that I just mentioned around being in a turnaround situation, along with a challenging capital markets, which I'm sure we'll talk about perhaps a little bit later, we've focused our strategy on organic growth. And so we have not acquired since I've come on board. And I'm really happy to, and we can get in more deep, we can go in more details later, but we've really, in many ways, proven that, really focusing on your team, winning the hearts and minds of your team members, and focused execution, particularly in a market like dermatology where demand is strong, but you need to execute to win. We demonstrated a really unique ability to do that.
So, with your practices spanning multiple states, how do you ensure that the same high quality of standard of care and patient experience is delivered across the network?
It's not easy. When this is the fifth company I've had the privilege of leading in a multitude of specialties in healthcare, and it's all been in a multi-state, multi-unit environment with a dispersed workforce. It's really challenging. So I think a couple of ways that we do it here at Anne Arundel Dermatology, or AAD, is, first and foremost, you've articulated clear standards and expectations across the board, both when you're recruiting a new talent as well as with your existing team members, and feel really good about how we've been able to achieve that through consistent communication, et cetera. So that's point one. I think secondly is, when you're in a dispersed workforce, particularly in healthcare, where the provider themselves carry the license, not the company. And so, we don't tell them how to practice medicine because it's their license, not ours. But we do create a number of sort of infrastructural support around those providers, to ensure that consistent quality, that consistent delivery of great care and exceptional care is there. So we do it through, a number of provider councils, whether it's a physician's council, a Mohs council, an aesthetic council, that are staffed not by business people like myself, but the members of them are our providers, are our physicians, are our nurse practitioners, our physician assistants. And so it's a kind of a two-way street. In other words, they're not only setting policy or protocols clinically and disseminating that out, but they're also the eyes and ears from a clinical standpoint to ensure that what we're doing creates that level of consistency. I've been doing this, Edwin, for, like I said, 25 plus years, all in healthcare. I'm not a provider. I'm not a physician. I've never made a clinical decision, never will. And that's because of how we create that sort of support structures around our practices across the 7 states where we operate.
So innovation in dermatology continues to accelerate. So what new technologies, treatments, or approaches, and are you seeing AI as part of your solution?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 areas I would maybe hone in on as it relates to innovation, and there's certainly more in a lot of details we'll go into. But first, there's a lot of advances in biologics, so in pharmaceuticals to treat whether it's psoriasis, eczema, and other sort of other areas in dermatology that have really advanced to get great outcomes for our patients. There's a lot of equipment advances and new innovations in laser treatments for skin resurfacing and other ways in which the lasers kind of really impact the outcomes for patients. And then the third area is what you just mentioned around artificial intelligence. It is becoming more and more part of healthcare companies like mine anyway. That sort of are impacted in every aspect of our business. So if I start on the sort of the front end, if you will, within the exam room, working with our electronic health record from scribing standpoint for effective notes and coding that sort of augments what we do in person, is becoming more and more prominent, all the way to the back office and the infrastructure and how we support our practices, whether it's revenue cycle management or like coding, submitting claims, as well as collecting revenue, to our call center, our centralized call center, and how we can efficiently interact with our patients in the most convenient way 24/7. We can't staff our call center 24/7. So really looking at ways in which we can take advantage of some of those tools that are out there. And a lot of stuff in the press right now is focusing on how AI is going to take away jobs and cut costs, et cetera. And while some of that may be true, and maybe even true to some extent within anterenal dermatology, my focus has really been on how does it help our providers provide great, exceptional care? How does it give our patients the most convenient access to us? And that's really kind of our goal of how we leverage AI. We're really, I'd say we're at the nascent stages of that. We're certainly not on step 1 or 2, but we're certainly not, at step 8 or 9. And so we've still got a ways to go, but we're looking at how we leverage that innovation in AI throughout every aspect of our organization, because I think companies who don't are going to get left behind.
So let's talk a little bit about the capital journey. Ridgemont Equity Partners came in I guess 2020, and there was a
Yes.
predecessor. Walk us through a little bit of the history of your capital journey. You came in after that. Is that
I
correct?
did, yeah. So I joined in 2023, and Ridgemont Equity Partners, which is a private equity firm based out of Charlotte, it's been an amazing partner for myself, my team, as well as for all of our practices. And I think in order to kind of understand our capital journey, you kind of it's yes, it's about Ridgemont's becoming majority owner of the business, but it's also understanding the context of the last 5 years. So if you think about the last 5 years, in healthcare services and just really in kind of industry in general, COVID, had a huge impact on all of us, and some of the sort of the perfect storm, if you will, around higher interest rates. Interest rates went up 500 bips over the last number of years. That certainly has put a strain on our cap table, on our cost of capital for borrowing, servicing our debt, which companies like us have. With the last 5 years, our labor costs have gone significantly up, and at the same time, our reimbursement rates, including with CMS or Medicare, have either stayed flat or declined in certain instances. So that puts a lot of pressure on sort of the middle of the P&L, if you will, when you can't raise prices, so to speak, to sort of match the sort of the labor cost increases that you must have. You must increase to stay competitive in the sort of labor marketplace, and at the same time, you've got cost of capital going up. And so, that's it's been a challenged environment to navigate through and to lead through. And what I'm excited about is that we have navigated through that. It hasn't been easy. It's still not easy, but it's been a real focus on organic growth and really making sure we build an infrastructure and a platform, if you will, that is made up of fantastic talent with focused execution. Because the days of just acquiring, and getting the arbitrage on the sort of the spread between the multiple you acquire and the multiple you sell, I don't want to say those days are over, but really, it's we've really focused on how do we create value, sustainable, enduring value that's sort of durable earnings, which is through, in my mind, through really building a solid engine and a core to drive organic growth to meet the demand in the marketplace for our patients. And so, we've adapted to that challenged market or that challenged sort of capital markets, at least in the foreseeable future. And while we're not where we not where we want to be in the end, we're certainly not where we were, and I'm pleased with the progress that we've made in a continued challenging environment.
So, talent is a critical part of your success. How do you attract and retain top physicians and clinical professionals?
Yeah, so when I think about both recruiting and retaining top talent, it's really about how is a company, improving and enhancing the employment value proposition for its team members. Again, regardless of the level, but I'll certainly kind of hone in a little bit on physicians, et cetera. So when I think of the employment value proposition, the way I look at it kind of as sort of three legs to the stool. The first leg is kind of the easiest one, frankly, to talk about, which is compensation and benefits. I mentioned a little bit earlier about, some of the sort of the market dynamics on comp and benefits, but we've had to continue to look at ways to invest in that, or what we call our benefits roadmap, both for non-providers and providers alike. And in many respects, like if you're not going to be competitive in comp and benefits, you're going to lose. So it's sort of a bit of a ticket to get into the show, so to speak. And so I'm pleased with how we've continue to improve that part of the employment value proposition for all of our team members, again, on compensation and benefits. The second leg of that stool is what we call work environment. And so the work environment and that employment value proposition, yes, it's the physical location, but it goes much further than that. It's also, leadership, both locally and from an enterprise standpoint, how effective they are, culture, the support, the services that you surround that environment with, whether it's locally or from an enterprise standpoint. It's the team around the team you're on, or you feel supported. Do you have effective team members supporting you? And so those are some areas that I think are really important around that work environment part of the sort of employment value proposition. And the last and certainly not least is in that employment value proposition to sort of compete for talent is the opportunity to learn and grow. And whether you want sort of career advancement from a title standpoint, or whether you just want to continue to grow within your current role, how is a company like Arundel Dermatology investing in that area? So we've invested in building a learning and development function, an annual leadership conference where we bring our leaders and all of our providers together annually for a few days to both reflect on the year in the rearview mirror, the rear ahead, as well as professional development. Building, kind of how you're building a bench for emerging talent. And we have what we call a Rising Stars program, where we're investing in a number of leaders that are kind of one layer below or two layers below, but that we believe are kind of our emerging talent. And so it's a little bit of a surround sound approach to building a competitive employment value proposition in those three areas. When we started, without getting into specific numbers, I could just tell you just general results. Our turnover of our team members has gone down, I think, by almost half of what it was when I started this journey with my team in May of 2023. So again, we're not where we want to be, Edwin, but we're certainly not where we were, and we're making progress, and I'm really proud of our efforts in that regard.
So, can you share how AAD continues to give back and is really involved in in the communities that you serve?
Sure. I think it starts with really understanding our mission. And our mission is to give exceptional care to our patients and each other. And there's a number of words that I want to hone in on because it kind of relates to your question. So the word give was very intentional, which is more of a selfless act of giving versus providing. Exceptional care, not just to our patients, but to each other. And because really, with our nearly 1,800 team members in our 7 states where we operate and our over 100 practices, those team members are part of our community. And so, in 2024, there were a couple of really devastating hurricanes that went right through Tampa, which is one of the areas where we have over 20 practices, along with up through Georgia, Atlanta, and Augusta. We had a number of team members that were displaced and out of their homes as a result of that. And one of the ways that we gave back to our community through our team members was we continued their salaries and we continued their compensation through a number of weeks where we were closed down. And so to me, that we think that's an important way to give back. And that actually led us to create what we call our AA Derm, or Anne Arundel Dermatology Care Fund, which is a 501c3 nonprofit uh, employee relief and disaster fund that's funded by our team members, myself, our physicians, frankly, everybody, through their generosity to be able to sort of support our team members in addition to what the company does to support those when in time of need, whether it's a disaster, whether it's medical, really a medical situation, a housing situation. So it allows our team members to access some resources when they need it. In addition to that, we do a number of things. And by, you asked a question earlier about how do we drive sort of consistency around quality, et cetera, in a dispersed environment? Well, part of that is also in regards to giving the flexibility and the encouragement for our local teams not to be waited, not to wait to be told how to do something, but to be innovative and to be entrepreneurial and to go out and give back to their communities. And so that happens each and every day in different ways in our more than 100 practices, both within their practice as well as in their communities. And we're happy to support that.
So let's look ahead. What are your top strategic priorities for the coming year?
Yeah, so in some respects, it's how do we continue to double down on what we've been executing on, and certainly evolve in our execution. So going back to our mission, our priorities are rooted in achieving our mission, or striving to, as well as our strategy. And so you see, our strategic priorities are really focusing in on, continuing to be incredibly accessible and convenient for our patients to interact with us. We measure our net promoter score, which is that key question of, would you recommend our Anne Arundel Dermatology services to a family member or a friend? And we're in the upper 80s, which is really world class, and that's super important validation for what I just described. Continue to support that, continuing to ensure that we're able to both recruit and retain the best talent possible in our markets. And so a lot of our priorities are around that area. And then last and certainly not least is to continue to execute around our prioritized initiatives, et cetera. I'm a firm believer, and I kind of did mention this earlier, but if you don't mind, I'll do it now. Like, you can't lead or manage a company through an Excel spreadsheet. And my team is out there, I'm out there really kind of meeting and being in our practices each and every week. And I think that's key to driving our strategic priorities, because we have a good pulse on what's going on in our more than 100 locations, and we can ensure that we're not leading through an ivory tower or through an Excel spreadsheet based here in the Baltimore area, but that we're really, those are really strategies that kind of, they emerge from the ground up. And I'm really proud of the progress we've made in that regard.
So finally, for Cineba's readers, many of whom are investors, entrepreneurs, and healthcare leaders, what's one thing that you'd like them to understand where AAD's headed, or is there something that you haven't covered in this interview that you'd like to cover?
Yeah, a big part of my leadership philosophy, and I've certainly interwoven it throughout the interview, is that financial results are at the end of the equation. They're not. It's not at the beginning of the equation. It's after the equal sign, and before the equal sign is really, focus on team, focus on your key stakeholders as team members, and then followed by providing great quality care to your patients or whoever you serve. And that those are the things, those are the building blocks that will lead to sustainable financial results. And here at Anne Arundel Dermatology, what we believe, we've been I think a classic case study in orchestrating a transformation or a turnaround, honing in on those elements. And we've kind of proven out the model that you can build a sustainable organic growth engine that creates enduring value, kind of durable value for all stakeholders, starting with our patients as well as our investors, and you can do both. I'm a firm believer that you can make money and make a difference, and that they're not mutually exclusive. And that's something that guides us each and every day here at Arundel Dermatology, and I'm looking forward to seeing that journey continue.
Well, Vincent, I want to thank you for sharing your story, and we wish you the best of luck and keep us surprised as you expand and grow in the coming years.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.